Welcome to the show, Emma.
Hi.
So, what's your recovery date?
June 26th this
June 26th, when?
this year, 2023.
So, what was going on like June 25th?
So I broke my elbow 8 years ago when I was in recovery for 2 years. And at that time it was basically from like methamphetamines, benzos, alcohol. So I broke my elbow and I got prescribed Percocet for 6 months. And basically it just turned in from Percocets to the Percocet with fentanyl to then heroin and then heroin with fentanyl and then ended up with like the xylazine and fentanyl, and then mixing that with benzos. So my boyfriend went to jail on the 23rd, and we both got a bed in detox at the same on the same day when he got out of jail on the 26th. So basically, like I would call detox every, week or so, like saying I want to get in, and they would call me when they would have a bed, but they would always call and be like, okay, we have a bed right now. And I wasn't really good with the right now thing. So they ended up like setting it up the day before, and he said he would go also. And that was like, I tried going to detox a few years ago when I was working, and insurance wasn't covered, or treatment wasn't covered after, which they told me it would be. And so basically, just, I got sick of trying to figure out, how I'm going to get high. If I wasn't high, I would be so suicidal, depressed, just really like down. I mean, I wouldn't see my friends, my family, and my boyfriend's family is super supportive. He ended up leaving detox after 2.5 days. So he's still in active addiction. We've been together for 9 years. So that's kind of been hard, but I'm just hoping that, like I can want him to be sober, and everyone wanted me to be sober, but until you make that choice for yourself, um, it's, no one else is in control of you. So,
So, when did you start? Like, did you get drunk first or get high first?
I would say I got high on weed first when I was about 16, 15, 16. And my dad was really like sheltering. My mom left when I was in fifth grade, the first couple days of fifth grade, and she was a meth addict. She wouldn't admit that. So like I knew about addiction, and my dad was prescribed benzos. He wouldn't say that he's an addict, but he definitely was. He's clean now. He's actually passing away due to like health complications and stuff. But when I moved out when I was 18, just because like I didn't get to, like go experience things, like if it was Halloween or New Year's, like I didn't get to go and do stuff on those days because my dad's like, well, I know what happens on those days. So when I got my first apartment, I moved in with my best friend, and shortly after she had found out she was pregnant. And I think I drank one time before I moved out, and like it wasn't a good experience for me. But then when I moved out, like I wanted to party, and she found out she was pregnant. So we stayed living together for about 2 months, and then I ended up getting my own apartment. And that's when I really realized like I did have a problem with alcohol. So I would say like alcohol and benzos, the whole like 6 months that I lived in my apartment, I mean, it was an everyday thing. I still worked, did all that I was supposed to. And um, I ended up getting a second degree felony possession for having 150 Xanax. And I ended up going to jail, which I was so scared of being in jail. I was there for 4 days the first time, and I got bailed out. And when I got out, I was like, I can't do something that's going to like cloud my judgment, or I don't know what's going on. And like I look at it kind of like a blessing in disguise, because I had 4 days off of work. And I mean, I never had 4 days off in a row. And I had all these Xanax, and like my first day off is when I got caught with them. So I was like, okay, maybe it's like saving my life. So I stayed sober when I got out of jail for probably like a month, and I was working. I moved back in with my dad, and I hung out with a close friend, and they were smoking meth. And I've always been so against meth. I've like never wanted to try it, never wanted like anything to do with it. And then I was like, well, this, won't make me forget this, it's like the opposite. So I ended up trying it. And of course, my friends, which I, look back and I'm like, probably not my friends, but I tried that. And I mean, it just completely like changed my group of friends, like the people I was around.
Yeah, it's you can't like meth is one of those drugs that you're not like doing recreationally.
Right, exactly.
Like nobody does meth for fun.
Right.
You either do meth or you don't. Like I've never seen anybody do a drug like that just for shits and giggles.
Right. And I think part of me was like, okay, like what's so great about meth that, my mom would leave her whole family for, this drug. So kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like there must be something to it, and within probably, I got into a relationship with somebody that like when I was in ninth grade, there was a murder in my hometown, and like people just put me on like the opposing side of like the person that died. So like they thought I was like on the murderer's side or whatever. And I was really young, like I was just dating someone that was like connected with, the murderer side of it. And I ended up, the person that got murdered, his name's Trent, and I ended up dating his brother, and he was selling at the time. And so I kind of just was like easy to get. And then, I was working a job that I worked for years, and I ended up like, I don't know, like I just wasn't doing well. So like my manager came in and I told him like I need you to close for me, like, and he like brought it up to me and he was like, yeah, like honestly, like I think you're on that shit. And I was like, well, if you think I'm on that shit, then like I don't even want to work here, like obviously denying it, like saying I got prescribed Adderall, like thinking that would like mask the fact that I'm actually doing meth. And I've been off meth for 10 years now, but I wasn't, I ended up running on my warrant for my second degree and doing 4 months in jail. And then I had to do treatment and a halfway house, and I was sober for 2 years until I went tubing and I broke my elbow. And I never experienced like opiates or perks. Like I've tried taking like a 5 milligram like here and there, and it always make me like throw up and sick. But with my injury, I just literally had to. I mean, I couldn't bend my arm or any of my fingers for a year. Physical therapy 3 times a week, an 8-hour surgery. I was in the hospital for a couple weeks.
So
So
how'd you break your elbow?
I was tubing, and my friend like seen somebody that she didn't get along with, and like they followed our car. So it was kind of like a 3-on-3 fight. And like I didn't know the girl and at all. Like I didn't find out her name for like 6 months after this. But so basically we hit each other like one time, and then she landed on my back and she was like bigger than me. So my elbow caught my fall, so it like bent the other way. And this is actually my scar here.
Oh shit.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I see it.
all metal, and there's like a buoy system to like make it bend and everything like that. And when they were prescribing me perks, I mean they would prescribe me 60 every like 5 days. And then after like 6 months they just cut me off. And that's when I like really learned what like withdrawals were. Because like when I was in jail for my second degree possession, I would see people in there withdrawing, and I'm like, why would anybody do this to themselves? Like with meth, you sleep and eat, that's what you do to come off of it. It's more like mental, where opiates was like, it's mental too, but it was so physical for me.
It's so physical, yeah. It's a totally different thing. And people don't realize unless you've been through like you
Right.
see in movies like people with their knees to their chest,
Yeah.
but that's not exaggerating whatsoever. Because I was addicted to pills for 10 years, and like you, how did you end up with 150 Xanax? Were you prescribed that many, or did you buy them in bulk?
So basically, I had a family member that would order them online. He was prescribed for many years, and if I um they would be ordered online from different countries, so I could get them for super cheap. And like I do have anxiety, but it's easy money, quick money, and I enjoy doing them, so that's always been like the one drug I feel like is hard for me to fully like let go of. Like now I haven't done anything, since June, but like I feel like with the fentanyl in the trink, like I know the risk of overdosing, and so it's like, and I do have like anxiety attacks and stuff, so sometimes I'm like, okay, like if I could take a Xanax, like, but I know like everything's laced these days as well. So it doesn't mean that's 100% safe. But I think just like the way it made me like not worry and like forget about certain things, like, and then mixing it with alcohol or fentanyl, it like doubles each other's effects and wouldn't need as much of one thing as the other. So, but
So you were a late bloomer then if you didn't start drinking or anything until you were 18. Like I started drinking when I was 11, 12.
yeah.
So
And there was a very early bloomer, like with like weed and not really alcohol, but with meth, because my ex that was the drug dealer, like I told him, like there's one day my brother came and hung out with us. He was 15 at the time, about to turn 16, and he was like, what's everyone doing? And this is right after I started doing meth, and I was like, oh, I'm rolling on ecstasy, because that's a little more because I did do
yeah.
like when I was like 17, and so I just said that, and he was like, "Well, I want to try it," and I'm like, "No," and he ended up like someone I was with like gave him a Xanax so he would like go to sleep, and I had explained to my ex, I'm like, you know what, I never want my brother to do meth, like I don't like I like he smoked weed since he was like 11, and it's just something like I know my brother's personality and how he is. So I was like, I don't want him to do it. And me and him ended up like getting into an argument. I ended up leaving for a couple days. And when I came back, I had found out like he got my brother high on meth. My brother is 28, and, he still struggles with meth. Um, and he recently has been struggling with like opiates as well. So I mean that's kind of hard for me because like I feel like it's kind of my fault that like he wouldn't have got introduced to it if it wasn't for me, but it's like
How much older are you?
I'm 2 years older.
Okay, I mean, he was making his choice at that point. Like
Right.
you can't hold whether he was going to try with you or he's going to try with somebody else. You
And
know
like
what I mean?
I always feel like I would never want, like personally, like I would never want to be like, here's a foil, hit this for the first time, or um like I never would want to be someone's first time using, because I know like what addiction has done to my life. Just recently, like in the last year, people would come over that are withdrawing, or used to doing like heroin or fentanyl, but not like the xylazine. And I mean, like in the last year, I've Narcaned and like had to bring back like 15 people. And I mean, it's just like crazy. Like, I'm so thankful for Narcan. And like, it's always been me. So, like, when I think about, like if I relapse, like, I don't know if I could really trust anybody to like be like alert enough or like aware enough to like know, like, because like me, I'll always like, even if they don't fully need Narcan, like if there's any like part of me that's like, okay, like they do, like I'm gonna give it, so
So what's it? I've never tried Trank before. Like, and people might not even know about it, but I know about it because I used to. You know, Kensington. You ever hear of Kensington? Like, I used to get high like 5 miles from there.
yeah.
But I never got into heroin. So, but I've interviewed somebody on my show that spent time in Kensington,
Hmm.
where Trank is huge.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what Trank is, it's horse tranquilizer.
Yeah. Xylazine. Yep.
Yeah, and people mix that with fentanyl
Yep.
and heroin.
Yes. And so Kensington, I've seen like a lot of videos, and like people think it's not as common here. I was addicted to the xylazine and fentanyl for 3 years. It would get to the point where it's like even regular fentanyl would not help my withdrawals at all. So I would need the xylazine, because when I was in detox, they asked me like, did you know you were doing it? And I said, yeah, I did, because it was the only thing that would help me at that point. I have a friend who is a double amputee, lost 7 of her fingertips because of like a blood infection. And it's like, I never have used a needle. I've never shot up. I strictly like smoked it, but they told me like, even like the wounds and stuff, you can get that from, just using, like, not IV. So that's always like freaked me out. But when I went to detox, they said, most people that come in, like, we haven't seen many people come in off xylazine. And if they do, they usually have to go to the hospital. So, I was just like really like sick. Like, it was horrible. I mean, like, there would be days where I'm like, being dead would be easier than feeling like this.
So that withdrawal is much worse than even fentanyl?
Hmm.
Because I haven't had anybody on that, did trank, so I'm not really familiar with it.
I mean, it's like horrible. I mean, like I don't know. I would compare it to almost like taking like Suboxone or something too early, and it's like precipitated withdrawal, but like your whole withdrawal is like that from not like going into precipitated withdrawal.
How long was the half-life? Like, how long would you go into withdrawal after your last use?
Probably about 4 hours. Like, everyone said it like lasts longer and it's supposed to like, have a longer half life. But like what I've noticed with, because everyone around me had switched over to xylazine and the fentanyl, but yeah, like 4 to 6 hours.
Which is not at all. I mean,
Right.
not at all. I mean, I remember I would go to bed. If I was high when I went to bed, I would wake up withdrawing.
Yeah.
And that's like 6 to 8 hours roughly. But 4 hours, that's rough.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, like, I would literally, like, I would take Xanax, like, if I couldn't get the drink right away, and then like having the Xanax in your system, like if you've ever had Xanax in your system and then even done like heroin or pills, like it doubles the effect. And so I would literally just like sit there and I would have a foil and I'd be smoking and like pass out for a couple hours and like wake up and like need to smoke, fall back to sleep, wake up, need to smoke. Like, it was just like a constant like cycle of like figuring out how to get money, how to go grab,
Yeah,
do all.
how expensive is that?
So I would say it's like 140 a gram.
And you would go through a gram in a day?
Yeah, probably like with me and my boyfriend both using. I mean, there's times we would go through like 3 grams a day or more. It all depends like how the money situation is. And then of course, like if we only had like $100 and like we could like try to make it last, but then we would have like 400 and we'll be like, okay, we'll be good for a couple days. And then you like smoke it all in one night. So I mean, it always changed.
And how were you? Like, were you working that much that you could afford it, or?
So I did work for most of my addiction. But my boyfriend, we had a lot of money saved up. We bought our house. And yeah, so we just had money saved up. And then, I mean, we would like sell things or like he would, do side jobs or just, but yeah, basically I was working for most of the time. Yeah. And then when I quit my job, just because of, stuff with the coworker, and I mean, like, I would do 3 times more of the work than everybody, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm on, drugs. Like, I don't understand, like how I'm doing so much more than everybody. So it kind of like burnt me out. And but yeah, it was, and then like obviously like selling to make money just to like stay high.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that's an expensive habit to pick up, and no one like meth. No one does that just for fun.
Right, exactly. Like,
Uh,
I felt like if I wasn't so sick all the time, like I feel like that's what kept me using for so long, is just the withdrawals and like how shitty I would feel, honestly.
what is that withdrawal like? Is it like an opiate withdrawal, or is it worse?
Yeah, I would say worse, but yeah, it's like an opiate withdrawal, like your whole body hurts, like hot and cold, like sweating, and then cold
Stomach cramps.
up constantly. You can't eat, can't sleep for, I mean, like days. Like, I didn't sleep or eat for the first I mean, like 6.5, 7 days in detox.
But you didn't do the inpatient, you just did a
I
detox.
did it. Nope, I did detox for 10 days and then I went to inpatient afterwards. Yep.
How
For
long were you an inpatient for?
28 days.
So you did the full month basically, because that's what I
Yep.
did, 28.
Yep.
And that's this time around, correct? That was this past June, July.
Yep.
What makes you think that this time it's different? Because you've had 2 years before.
Yeah, and then I also had 3 months before from like opiates. So in like the 8.5, 9 years of opiates, this is the longest I've been sober. So I think just basically like knowing me and my boyfriend could go at the same time. And when he agreed to it so quickly, because his mom would be like, okay, are you guys ready? Like, do you want to go? And he would always like not say yes, but he said yes so quick this time where I was like, okay, maybe he is serious, because you hear so much like, okay, like you won't get sober, in a relationship that's using, or like you won't get sober together. So like I was like, okay, like we'll actually get sober together. And then when he had left detox, I'm like, okay, I found out. I tried calling him and his phone, he had just been in jail, so his phone was taken from the cops. Well, his mom wrote down a phone number for him for me to get a hold of him, and she wrote down the wrong number. So it was like some girl's name on the answering machine. And I finally got his actual number. And I mean, like where I went to detox, like I could have walked home. Like there's this amazing detox in Minnesota called Gateway. And I mean, it's not like detox where they just like don't care about you. I mean, like it's like a 5-star place. It's like 2,600 a day to be there. It's like super nice. All the like workers, nurses are mostly in recovery, so they know what you're going through and they actually really care. And that's where I went to detox last time. I didn't get to go to inpatient last time I went to detox, so I felt like that made like a big difference. I went to New Beginnings, and I went there 10 years ago when I was coming off of meth, and it worked. And I went to sober living, 10 years ago. I didn't do that this time because I didn't have any criminal charges. My felony ended up dropping to a misdemeanor about 4 years ago. So like this time using, like I didn't get into any trouble. My boyfriend, on the other hand, he has, some open cases for, some felony charges and stuff like that. But luckily, like I stayed out of that for the most part, like the criminal aspect of it. Not to say I didn't break the law, because obviously I did that every day, but I just got really lucky. Like I didn't have to follow recommendations. I kind of look back and I'm like, maybe I should have went to sober living, just to like have some more time, because like my environment is still the old environment that I used in, and people around me are still using. So I think
And
are
are they using meth around you? I mean, because I don't understand.
fentanyl and tree.
Okay, because you haven't done meth in like 10 years, you said,
Mm-hmm.
and you never felt like a reason to start it in your new addict, like.
No, and like everybody that does trank or fentanyl, I mean, like literally probably 80% do both. And
What I was gonna say, like one brings you up and one takes you down. Like that's why I sound so confused.
yeah, and that's what I never really understood, because I was like, why pay all this money to like be down if like you're just gonna like switch it around, like that. Like what, when I went to treatment and like jail, like honestly I lost all desire for uppers or like meth. Like I got really lucky in that aspect, because like a lot of people, meth is like, any drug's hard to like recover from and like not do anymore. But I mean, like I could be around meth and like I had never had a desire to do it again. And
For
so I
people that don't know, because meth is like you said, mental. People that don't know, like
mhm.
you're seeing things. You go
Yeah,
into complete psychosis, and sometimes it takes 90 to 6 months. It takes
right.
sometimes 6 months for the mental part of it to be done. So yeah, but you don't feel any like you don't feel sick coming off meth.
Right,
Like
exactly.
basically,
I would say, I tell people all the time, like I would come off meth like 100 times before, coming off of opiates, because it was, I mean, like I was in jail when I came off of it, but all I did was basically sleep and then eat like when I was awake. But opiates, it's completely different.
This podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it, that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA. Yeah, that's not a fun. People that don't know opiates, alcohol's the worst.
Yeah, yep. And I've gone through alcohol withdrawals. I didn't really know as much about withdrawals when I was drinking. But benzo withdrawals are bad too.
You can only die from like 2 withdrawals, and it's alcohol and benzos.
Hmm.
Like those are the 2 that have to be supervised or highly recommended to be supervised coming off of. When did you go back on Xanax when you got back on like opiates, or did you still stay away from Xanax?
So day from benzos is also June 26th. I was doing the Xanax and drank pretty much for the last year.
Were you just blacking out every time?
I wouldn't really black out from Xanax because like I had taken so many Xanax and I do have like high anxiety. Like people around me that take Xanax, I mean like even like a tenth of what I take, I mean it's bad. I mean if my boyfriend's only taken Xanax probably a couple times, but he ends up like in jail, not knowing his charges, or like passed out on the floor, like, you know, not even waking up. So I've always felt like I've had like a higher tolerance, or just like
How many milligrams a day were you doing?
I would probably take up to like 10 milligrams a day.
Which is like 5 bars?
Yeah. And it was like basically like, so there'd be like regular Xanax, or then there'd be like the pressed Xanax, with probably had fentanyl in it, but it was also like a stronger like benzo, like not even Xanax. Like I don't even know exactly what it was, but I could tell when it was that or when it wasn't. But when I would take Xanax, like I would like clean and like get stuff done. Like it wasn't like I'm just like out of it. But then when I would mix like the trank and the fentanyl with it, then I would be, you know, like passed out, or like, you know, you see those videos of people like bent in half, or like, you know, that's kind of how it would be if I mixed them together.
Yeah, I used to mix them with Roxy 30s, and like, which was dumb because I would do them all in one line, and snorting Xanax it has no effect.
Right. It's like
must
not watching volleyball, and like I see people snorting Xanax all the time, and I try to tell them that, you know, like you know, it might be better if you just take it, you know, but they're like, oh, I feel it, like it's fine. I'm like, okay, like personally I thought it was a waste, but you know.
No, and I think it's a waste too, but I was addicted to snorting as much was the drug. And were you addicted to snorting or smoking?
So it started out with snorting. Well, it started out I would just take them, and like when I started with like perks, and I would just take them, and then I would like snort them, and then like my boyfriend started smoking them like behind my back, and like I was so like judgmental and just like, oh my god, like that's gross, like I feel like you just like take that step. And then we had broken up for a few months, had got back together, and that's when I ended up like trying heroin for the first time. It was the day before one of my good friends' funeral, who killed himself in prison because he was withdrawing so bad from opiates. And it was the day before his funeral that I tried it for the first time, which I don't still understand. But then I started like snorting heroin, and then it turned into smoking it. So like I feel like that's like one of like I definitely had an addiction to smoking, and like the foil, and just like the whole routine.
Yeah, you're addicted to the routine as much as that's why in rehab they hammer down doing your laundry and making your bed and going to brushing your teeth and getting a shower every day, because they want you to get into like new rhythms and new habits.
Right.
Were you introduced to like AA or NA or anything like that when you were in there?
So since they were still kind of on like COVID stuff, like we didn't go to outside meetings. Last time I was in treatment, we went to a lot of outside meetings. But this time, like we had meetings come in, and like I was, you know, when I was sober for 2 years, I was really big into NA and AA. I probably go to NA like 4 times a week. My home group was last night, and someone got their 33 years. Two people got 15 years. A person got 5 years. So I mean, like everybody that got clean time last night, like it equaled 68 years and 10 months. And I'm like, okay, this program really works. Like I go to fellowship, I go to like Halloween parties for NA, I do service work. I really do see benefits from NA.
And do like people know that you're still living around like active addiction, and like they have to recognize that, because that's like not an easy
Yeah,
thing to do.
I do talk about it because, like sometimes if it's like, okay, share where you're at, like a lot of people do know, everybody pretty much knows. Obviously they don't think that's the smartest choice, because obviously like if I were to hear somebody say that, I would be like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. Um,
But you can get sober together. My wife and I had the same sober date, and
right. And like
it'll be
when I
4 years in February.
yeah, when I went, like that's what we planned. Like my sober date's actually my boyfriend's birthday, so we both went, and that was my hope. And um, like sometimes like I know detox is horrible, like being sick's horrible, but I'm like, okay, like, there's not really like an easy way through this, like I'm gonna have to take the hard way. I'm gonna have to, do what I don't want to, because like the whole time in detox, when I'm sitting there like tossing and turning, like not eating, I'm like, if I could just take one hit, like I would feel normal, but it's like that, it's never one hit, so
Yeah, and I think that you're definitely a testimony of the progress that you made since June. I mean, it does get like the physical part of it obviously gets easier. You're past that. Um,
definitely.
and the mental part is just not it's hard to be around that and see it happening, and to say no. Like I can understand why people in your home group are like taken back by that.
Right. And
Good. Well, are
a
you
few,
watching are you watching people smoke it in front of you?
I have, yeah. I mean, when I first got home, it wasn't like, it was more like on the down low and like not around me as much. But I mean, like, yeah, I do see people smoke around me. Like, just I have my phone set up on this table, and I mean, like, there's a roll of foil like right here. Like, I mean, like, that's not normal, So it's like I try to explain to my boyfriend, because like both times I've got sober, like he went to treatment, like we both went to detox a couple years ago, and he got to go to treatment, I didn't. And then that I was sober when he got home, and he relapsed the first day, and I found him basically like overdosed in the garage. Me and his mom did. And so basically, like, I like my brother, like we had a bad relationship for like the last year. He ended up getting a felony domestic assault against me, and like stole my friend's moving van or moving truck, U-Haul, and stuff like that. And I didn't end up going to the court date that I got subpoenaed to, and the charges got dropped. So I seen him like once for like 5 minutes, and then he had stopped over at my house. And I don't know like if he found something around here, but all of a sudden I'm like, I fell asleep, and all of a sudden like I just hear a body hit the floor, and I'm like, okay, like Chris, like you better go check what that is. And so my brother's like on the bathroom floor, and I ended up like having to Narcan him. And so, and like he felt super bad, with me being sober and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I still do see it. And I just try to like, stay sober and like show people that it can be, like it's possible, because like if you look at like the people I'm like have always been around, like everyone, like no one would have thought like, okay, like she's gonna get sober and stay sober, because using was such a big part of my life for so long that like, there's just some people where you're like, maybe they won't get sober. I always have hope that everyone will hopefully find like a better way to live, because like my last week when I was in treatment, I found out one of my close friends had passed away. He was supposed to go to treatment that same day. And the way he fell asleep like cut off his air supply. And I had got out of treatment and his funeral was the day before. So I had typed in rest in peace to like read the posts about him. And I counted in the last 6 years, like 47 people that I had posted like a rest in peace status with, that like I consider myself friends with, at least like good acquaintances with. And I'm like, this is taking so many lives. Like it really is life or death. Even like people that do meth or, whatever drug, like there's a possibility there's going to be fentanyl in it now.
And especially when you don't know that it's in, because like I talked to a guy that he got two press 30s
Yeah.
when he was in Mexico, but he didn't know they were pressed. He thought they were just regular 30s, like regular M boxes.
Yeah.
And he crushed them up and snorted them both of them at the same time in like this random bathroom in Mexico. And then he woke up like an hour later on the floor of this like dirty bathroom, and he was like, "Yep, they were definitely fentanyl." Like, and I had no idea. And when you do the amount that you think you're doing, because as addicts, we know what our drug of choice, like how much we can do to get it before we have a problem. And
Hmm.
I don't mean we have a problem physically. I mean like where you could die or not.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
I took too. Like you always find out by doing too much. Like one time I took too many Xanax, and because I was addicted to benzos too. And one time I took too many Xanax and I was driving. I drove an hour and a half each way to get my pills. And I was driving and I was like, okay, like 30 miles, that's my exit. And then like I blacked out for 60 miles. I like woke up again like 60 miles further, and it felt like 10 seconds, and I was completely blacked out while driving. So you learn what you can and can't do and the amounts you can do. So I'm just glad that you can be around it and be so positive. And how much Narcan do you keep on you?
Honestly, I probably have like 50 doses of Narcan. Because with the trank and fentanyl, what I've noticed is it takes like anywhere from like 4 to like 8 doses of Narcan. I've overdosed one time. It wasn't from trank. It was when I was still doing Percocets. I would take like 10 30s a day about, and like I was sick at work. And I was like wondering, like, I'm like calling my boyfriend, like, I need something. I'm so sick. And it was like an hour before I was getting off work. And he brought me something and he was like, well, I was just in the bathroom puking. And like, I didn't believe him, of course. I'm just like, yeah, right. You're just saying that because you took hours to get here. And so I ended up taking like a 15, and which is like barely anything compared to
Yeah.
what I was taking. And I had overdosed, and the paramedics took like 20 minutes to get there. My boyfriend was doing CPR, mouth to mouth, and I ended up going to the hospital. And literally, like from Narcan, I was like even more sick. And so I got out and I literally did the same pills like I just overdosed on. And it just shows like how sick addiction actually is. Like I literally just died from that, but now I'm doing it, 2 hours later.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in it, you're in it. When you're in
Right.
addiction, it's hard to see any kind of light anywhere because all you do see is that darkness. There's no seeing the forest through the trees. It's I have a problem right now, and it's that I'm not high.
Right.
And
Exactly.
how am I going to get high again? When am I going to get high again? What am I going to get high with? It's
Yeah.
exhausting, like trying to keep yourself going like that.
Right.
I
And
get
like,
it.
I think that's one of my biggest things, like, with the using, because like when I would be withdrawing, I would see everybody else, like, when they would be withdrawing, didn't have downers, they would do meth, and like they seemed like they were doing better than I was. So it's like, but with so much clean time from meth, I was like, it wouldn't even be worth it. And my luck, it would probably make it worse for me. Just because I haven't done uppers for so long. So I feel like a lot of people, like when they're withdrawing, will like substitute one for the other, like I did with the Xanax. But um, like with like, I've only witnessed one overdose when I didn't have Narcan and I was in the car, and luckily I was sitting in the front seat because we had the back seat full of like these rims and tires we were going to sell, and the person next to me, like his whole body weight was on me, and we're driving down the highway. So I go to pick him up and he's like purple. So we pull off on the side of the road. My boyfriend's doing the chest compressions. I'm doing the breathing. You know, we don't have Narcan. Someone pulled off and was calling 911, and then the paramedics get there, and like they have to wait like 2 minutes in between doses of Narcan. And so they dose him one time, and they're like wanting me to sit on the back of the car, and like I'm worried, you know, so I keep like checking on him to like see if he's okay. And I'm like, he's gonna need more than that, you know, like can you just dose him again? Like, you know, I know usually it takes a few doses. And they're like, well, what did he take? And I was like, you know, probably fentanyl, but I would just dose him again, you know, but they have like their rules or whatever. He ended up being okay. He ended up coming to my house after um he overdosed, and literally overdosed again, um twice in the same day, like after leaving the hospital. And at that point we're just like, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna go hang out with this girl. And I was like, well, you were just telling her you're sober, you know? So I was like, honestly, like, I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to like check your pockets. Like, you can't bring anything with, because if someone thinks you're sober and doesn't know how to respond to an overdose, like, you will be dead. Like, not it's not a joke, you know? So I feel like that's why, like, if anyone around me that wasn't usually around me, or if anybody got out of jail or like hadn't used for a few days, like I was always the one that I was like, okay, like I got to make sure they're fine. Like literally when I would get Narcan, I would literally like load it into the needles, like ready to go. Because like with the nasal, I've only used the nasal twice, and I just feel like with them not breathing, it's not as effective as just, you know, the injectable Narcan. So.
So you don't even. I was thinking you had that many of the like breathing one. You're using a needle,
Mm-hmm.
and
Like
is
the
that
little,
like is that a
I
puncture? Is that one of the muscle ones where you can just do it anywhere?
yeah, I usually do it on like their arm or leg, like the times I've had to do it. But I do have the nasal one as well, because that's what, you know, they prescribe. They gave me some when I left treatment. They gave me some from like Walgreens. You know, they told me like they put 8 refills on there for Narcan, and they're like, give it out to your friends. We want as much Narcan out there as possible. So I always have Narcan on me.
Check the United Way too. I know the
Yeah.
United Way near me does like huge giveaways in Narcan where it's just take it, it's free.
Yeah, and I actually just went a few weeks ago. We had this breaking the silence, fighting the you know, fentanyl crisis, and it was put on in Minneapolis, and they gave away Narcan there, and they also said like there's this foundation that, you know, you can like hook up with, get Narcan and like deliver it to people, or like mail it out, or like package like the, you know, the envelopes with it and stuff like that. So, and it was basically like parents that lost their kids to, you know, opiate addiction. That, yeah, I'm in a few groups on Facebook, like, you know, opiate groups, or like Angels of Fentanyl, and like fentanyl groups of like people that have lost people to like fentanyl overdoses. And I mean, like the numbers are just like crazy the last few years of how many people have overdosed. And like, you know, and that's what I think about, like when I don't want to use, I'm like, you know, like I'm not ready to die. You know, last year I was ready to die, like I wouldn't have cared. But like now, you know, like I'd rather, you know, live. Like I'm only 30 years old, and it's like I've lost so many people, and like I've seen what their families have gone through. And like, you know, my best friend, her sister just passed away. The Friday I went to detox on a Monday, and the Friday before I went to her celebration of life. And me and my best friend have been best friends for 16 years, and her other sister was there, and she's like, you don't want your family, you know, to have to do this. And like when I told her I was going to treatment, like she just started crying, like so happy. Because at the like when people would say like, I don't want you to overdose, I don't want you to die, I was like, I know my limits, like I know my tolerance, like I know, like I'm not going to overdose, you know. And that's what everyone thinks, I'm sure, you know. And but with how much I was using, like I really didn't feel like that was possible. And like before, when I started using like smoking, everyone's like, and that's when it was heroin, but um everyone's like, you can't die from smoking it. And it's like what I learned with the trank and fentanyl, like people would literally like not even like be done taking the hit and they would be standing there already purple. Like it would, like they wouldn't even like have a chance to even blow it out. And it's like I would see people all the time that would take like one hit and overdose, and I'm like, I could sit and hit it like 15 times. And I think that's why my withdrawals were so bad too, is because like I used so much.
Your body was so used to it that, yeah, it was going to be a hard withdrawal.
I'm like 100 pounds, so I mean, like it was a lot on my body. Like I noticed, like just like even before withdrawing, like I was weak. Like I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating right. I would go like 2 weeks without even brushing my hair because it was just too much. Like it took too much energy. Like at first, like it would give me energy, and then like it was what would take away all my energy. So
That makes complete sense. I get that. Well, either way, you're sitting here, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down to talk about your story, because it is a common thing that's going on, but at the same time, like, it's not common, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, you're so used to the chaos that you can like be in the middle of it still, but also see light at the end of the day and be like, I don't have to live that way anymore. And if other people are, that's on them, and that's not on you. But you're there still with Narcan and ready to save lives. I mean, it's got to be a good feeling to know that you're sober to help someone stay alive.
Right, exactly. And I feel like, when I overdosed, because this is what people told me in treatment, I'm thinking, like maybe I didn't die because, like, that, 15 people in 1 year that I've saved. I'm like, maybe that is why, like, I didn't die when I overdosed. And luckily, like, people were around me that, like, they didn't really know, like, what to do, I wouldn't say, because I was, like, my boyfriend's first time, like, experiencing an overdose. And, like, when I look at it now, I'm like, like Narcaning 15 people is not normal. Like, it's not normal to, like, see that many people that are, pretty much dead. And so yeah, like when I was using the last like year of using, like I was ready to get sober. Like I was ready to be sober, but it was just like getting over like the sickness. And like obviously like my mental, like it takes like 2 years, they say, like for post acute withdrawals symptoms and everything like that. So I mean, like mentally there's some days where I'm like, I used to use before I did anything and everything, and like if I didn't have to deal with the consequences, which I know addiction brings, like, I'm not gonna lie, like I do miss getting high. Like I do miss like not having to feel my feelings, not having to like be mad and actually be mad. Like if I get into a fight with someone, or like I'm on bad terms with someone, or something happens, it's like I don't get to just run and escape and use. And that's why I'm so lucky for like NA, the fellowship, the people I've met sober, is because like I can talk to them about that and tell them like, hey, like I feel like I want to get high today. And they're like, well, that's normal. It's normal, especially in early recovery. But some people, 10 years sober, they're like, I still have those days, and especially they know I see it. But I think like seeing it also, I also see the negative side of it, and like the sickness. Like when people around me are sick, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so grateful I don't have to be sick. Or like when the person I grabbed from went to jail, and I'm like, oh my God, like that's the only stuff that worked for me. Like, what am I going to do now? So I'm like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like when my boyfriend would go to jail, I'd be like, okay, like I'm gonna be sick for a few days because like how am I gonna get the money, or how am I gonna use? And like I don't have to like be so obsessed about how I'm gonna, make it through the weekend, or like when I used to work, like how am I gonna go to work in withdrawal? How am I gonna, do anything in withdrawal? So I think it's just like I really do still see the negative side of it, and so I think that helps me stay sober too.
That's awesome that you can have that outlook. So, but thank you again for sitting down and being so open. I know it's not hard to kind of like go through, what you already been through, but I think 20s are for fucking up and 30s are for feeling better. And
Right.
it's okay to not be okay, and all those cliches that they say. I started recovery when I was 31. So like my 20s were fucked looking back. So I can totally see myself in you because of opiates and being so addicted to them. The
Mhm.
amount you were doing, I was spending like $300 a day to stay high. Like, it's crazy to do that math of like you were spending, two to 300, $400 a day, and then today you're like, why am I so broke when I'm not doing drugs?
And I was just thinking when you said that about the 20s and 30s, because I turned 30 in February, and what I wanted to do was to go to detox like right before my 30th birthday. So I could have spent all my 30s sober. I mean, like, I'm just like 4 months shy of that. But I was like, I fucked off my whole 20s. I want my 30s not to go like that. I mean, I don't have kids yet. Like, that's always like since my mom has left, like, I've always wanted kids. I've always wanted a family of my own. So, I mean, like, getting sober is the first step to doing that, because like I would never want to bring a child into this world like being addicted, having them be addicted. And like I understand, like, we watch videos and treatment of seeing kids born on opiates, and I know um how bad my addiction was, and like I don't judge anybody for using while pregnant, because I know like it's not that easy, to just be sober, and like the damage also that can cause to like an unborn child, just by like cold turkeying or like getting off, like. So it's like I just knew for myself, like I still want to do so many things in life that, I wasted a lot of time, and like I don't have control over how much time I wasted, but I do have control over if I waste any more time. So
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. I'm so glad you have all the. I'm glad they have the fellowship because that's such a strong thing to have on you is being able to call somebody that you can now relate to that isn't obsessed with getting high. It's more about the solution than it is the problem. Because when you're getting high, you think that you're solving your problem, but it's only solving it for now. It's not going to
right,
solve it for long term.
exactly.
So, but I think being around it and being still at 4 meetings a week is a good amount of going. So, thank you again, Emma. I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Bye.